All right, guys, welcome to the AceNet Kitchen for the first edition of Cooking with AK. My name is Adam. I am the kitchen manager here at AceNet. The whole purpose of why we're going to start doing this is so that you as a home cook can learn a few things here and there, but ultimately we are a commercial kitchen, so we want to give you some tips, some tools that you can use and actually transfer to stuff that you would bring to retail. Okay, now today, first thing we're going to do is gravy. All right, with the weather getting colder, the food's got to get warmer, right? So with warm food, the best possible thing you can do is coat it in a nice layer of gravy. I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. We're going to do a traditional way with a roux, butter, and flour. And then we're going to do a little bit of a different way, a fat-free option with a nice cold water and cornstarch slurry. So let's get right to it. So ingredient-wise, traditional gravy really couldn't be any simpler. Okay, now what we're going to be using today is a veggie stock that I made at home, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how I did that later on. Standard all-purpose white flour and butter. Okay, first things first, medium-sized saucepan, stovetop, medium heat. Okay, so again, we're using a ratio of equal parts butter and starch. In this case, I'm going to use 4 tablespoons of butter. It might seem like a lot, but we're making kind of a lot of gravy too. And we're just going to throw that right in and get it just where it's perfectly melted. We don't want to brown the butter. That's going to give it a little bit more of a nutty flavor, which we're not looking for in this case. We just want it to be just melted so that we can start adding the flour. So if you want to avoid dairy products, animal products, skip the butter. Any kind of fat will work. You can use olive oil, grapeseed oil, canola oil. You can double down on the animal fats if you want to. You can use lard, you can use bacon grease. You can go super gourmet and do something like duck fat, really impress your friends. It's really all up to you. You know, gravy is its own canvas and you can paint it how you want to. You just have to stick with those basic concepts of liquid, starch, and fat. Okay. So as that continues to melt, we'll go ahead and get our flour measured out. All right, so again, we're going to equal parts flour to fat. And if you wanted to use let's say rice flour, you can actually make this gluten-free. So we got our beautiful butter. I would say it's about halfway melted here. And you don't want to rush this. You know, you want to be patient. That's the key to any good gravy. Just something about melted butter, you know. Okay, so a good test to know when it's ready. I mean, it is all melted. We can see that it's all at the melted stage, which already is a good thing to see. But a real good test is just to sprinkle in a little bit of flour and see if it starts to bubble, burble, kind of babble. And once it starts to burble a little bit, that's when we know we're actually good to start getting the flour in there. Okay, so we're not quite there yet, but if we just keep an eye on it, that little sprinkle of flour is going to let us know. By mastering something as simple as really good gravy, it's going to really kind of expand everything else you can do in the kitchen. So still not quite there yet. Let's sprinkle in a little bit more, another pinch. Okay, now the purpose of a good roux is to thicken. That's what it's there for. It's your base for your gravy, and it's what gives it that nice, thick, kind of unctuous quality that we want to see. Okay? Flour, whisk. All right, so I'm going to do, that was probably a little over half of it to start. Don't be afraid to get physical with it, you know. Tilt your pan over, scrape it off the edges. You really want to cook out that raw flour taste. The rest of our flour goes in, and we're really going to see it start to thicken up now. And that paste is going to start to form. As long as we got an even heat and we continue to stir and we got those correct and equal ratios of fat and starch, we should be okay. So now that I got everything pretty well incorporated, I'm actually just going to kind of let this sit and cook away. Doesn't mean you want to walk away and go, you know, warm yourself up a bubble bath or anything. This is about the color that you want. We want to get a little bit darker than this. We want it to start to bubble up a little bit again. And wait for that shift from that raw flour kind of pastry, walk into a bakery in the middle of the morning, they're making bread smell, to that nutty, aromatic, almost a toasted bread kind of scent is what you're looking for here. And we're getting there, we're coming along. So this is a veggie stock. I made it home. Obviously, if you want to use chicken broth or turkey broth, beef broth, that's entirely up to you. All right, now we want this roux to suck up all the liquid before we add any more. Pour it right into the areas where the actual roux is at. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit on the cooktop because we're sloppy, but that's okay. At this point, now that we're about close to a cup incorporated, do one more little one, whisk that in, and then we're just gonna dump it all in there, okay? Now and then you wanna go ahead and pull your whisk out. See, you've got a couple lumps right there, so we wanna keep going. Bring it up to boil and let it reduce to simmer. Okay, so I got a couple sprigs of rosemary, drop those in. A couple sprigs of thyme. My one kind of untraditional ingredient, best mustard in the world, Cleveland's own original ballpark mustard. I put the stuff on everything. We don't need much of this, it's very powerful. So just a few dabs. So we're gonna take it off the heat. We're gonna run it through our nice mesh strainer. And it's just gonna make sure that we don't get any of those aromatics, that rosemary, thyme. You don't wanna eat a whole chunk of that stuff, that's no good. Our final step is pushing all that great flavor through the mesh strainer into our gravy. And there you have it. Traditional roux-based, vegetarian gravy, diced chives. Cheers. Just kidding.